Hello everyone! In this video, we will learn how to install MikroTik RouterOS on VMware Workstation to build a lab environment for network practice. Before we begin, please note that in the previous video, I already showed you how to configure VMware virtual networks for building a lab environment. So if you have not watched that video yet, I recommend watching it first so you can prepare the VMware network environment correctly. In this video, we will install a MikroTik router with 4 network adapters, representing a lab topology with 2 WAN connections and 2 internal LAN networks. Specifically, VMnet 8 will run in NAT mode and be used to simulate WAN 1. VMnet 1 will run in bridged mode and be used to simulate WAN 2. These 2 WAN interfaces will be configured to automatically obtain IP addresses via DHCP. Next, VMnet 11 will be used for LAN 11. VMnet 12 will be used for LAN 12. Both LAN networks will operate in host-only mode, allowing us to create separate internal network segments inside the lab environment. Unlike the WAN interfaces, these 2 LAN interfaces will be assigned static IP addresses directly on MikroTik, so they can serve as the gateway for devices in each LAN. After the installation is complete, our MikroTik virtual router will have all 4 required interfaces, ready for the next configuration steps, such as IP addressing, DHCP server, NAT, routing, and more advanced network lab scenarios. First, visit the official MikroTik website. I've already placed the download link in the video description below. Here, click on the CHR section. This is the RouterOS version optimized by MikroTik for virtual and cloud environments. Next, select the RouterOS version that you want to use. In this case, I will use version 7.21 for the installation and lab setup in this video. Next, we need to download the virtual machine image for VMware, so click on VMDK. Next, choose the location where you want to save the downloaded file. Next, we need to download Winbox. This is MikroTik's official management tool that allows us to configure RouterOS through a graphical interface in a much easier and more convenient way. After the download is complete, extract both files that we just downloaded. Next, create a separate folder for MikroTik. Then, move the CHR file into this folder to make it easier to manage and use during the virtual machine creation process in VMware Workstation. Now, open VMware Workstation. After that, we will begin creating a new virtual machine to deploy MikroTik RouterOS in our lab environment. Here, under Guest Operating System, select Other, and for the version option, also select Other. Next, give your virtual machine a name. You can choose any name you like, as long as it is easy to remember and manage during your lab setup. Next, choose the virtual machine storage location as the folder that we created in the previous step. At the disk configuration step, you can temporarily skip this part. After that, click Finish to complete the virtual machine creation process. Next, we will modify the virtual hardware settings and attach the MikroTik CHR VMDK file. First, adjust the RAM size for the virtual machine. For basic lab environments, allocating around 1 GB of RAM, or even less, is usually enough for MikroTik to run smoothly. In the processor section, you can assign 1 or 2 CPUs depending on your computer hardware and lab requirements. Next, remove the default hard disk that VMware automatically created. After that, we will directly add the MikroTik CHR VMDK file that we downloaded earlier to replace the default virtual disk. Here, select Use an existing virtual disk. After that, select the VMDK file that we downloaded and extracted earlier. This will be the main virtual disk containing the MikroTik CHR operating system for our virtual machine. Next, you can remove the CD/DVD drive. In this case, we are not using an ISO installer. Next comes the most important part, configuring the VMnets according to the network topology that we discussed earlier in the video. For the first network adapter, we will assign it to VMnet 8 to simulate the WAN 1 connection. After that, click on Advanced so we can assign a MAC address to this VMnet. The purpose is to make it easier to identify the correct network adapter inside MikroTik RouterOS in the next steps and avoid confusion between interfaces. Next, we will add a new network adapter and assign it to VMnet 1 to simulate the WAN 2 connection. To add a new network adapter, click the Add button. After that, we will select the network adapter device and assign VMnet 1 to this network adapter to use it as the WAN 2 connection in our lab environment. At this point, we have completed the configuration for the two network adapters used for WAN 1 and WAN 2. Next, we will add another network adapter and assign it to VMnet 11 for the LA11 network. This will be the first internal network in our lab environment, where client devices will connect to the MikroTik router. Finally, we will add one more network adapter and assign it to VMnet 12 for the LAN 12 network. After this step, our MikroTik virtual machine will have all four network adapters configured according to the planned lab topology, including two WAN interfaces and two internal LAN networks. Everything is now ready. Go ahead and power on the virtual machine to start booting MikroTik CHR. Once the system has finished booting, the default username will be admin, and there will be no password initially. If you want to read it, you can enter Y. In this case, I will choose N to skip and continue. After that, enter a new password for the admin account. This password will be used to log in and manage MikroTik RouterOS in future sessions, so it is recommended to use a strong and memorable password. Okay, so we have successfully completed the MikroTik installation on VMware. Next, we will start configuring IP addresses for the interfaces according to the network topology that we planned earlier. Now, it's time for us to use Winbox. Here, Winbox will automatically load the list of MikroTik devices currently active on the network. You simply need to click on any MikroTik MAC address to establish a connection. After that, enter the password that you configured earlier, then click Connect to log in to MikroTik RouterOS. If the connection is successful, you will be able to access the MikroTik RouterOS management interface like this. Next, to make management easier, we will rename the interfaces inside MikroTik RouterOS. Renaming the interfaces based on their functions will make them easier to identify and configure in the next steps. From the left side menu, click on Interfaces. Here, you will see 4 interfaces corresponding to the 4 network adapters that we configured earlier in VMware. To accurately identify which Ethernet interface corresponds to each VMnet in VMware, this is exactly why we assigned MAC addresses to the network adapters earlier. By checking the MAC address, we can easily match and rename the correct interfaces without confusing the WAN and LAN connections. Depending on your own management style, you can choose any interface naming method that is easy to remember and manage. Okay, in the same way, continue renaming the remaining interfaces according to their roles in the lab topology. Once completed, managing and configuring MikroTik will become much more organized and easier. Next, we will configure IP addresses for the interfaces according to the network topology that we planned earlier. At this step, the WAN interfaces will obtain dynamic IP addresses through DHCP, while the LAN interfaces will be assigned static IP addresses to act as gateways for internal devices. By default, the WAN1 interface has already received an IP address automatically from the DHCP service on VMnet 8. Now, we will configure the WAN2 interface to automatically obtain an IP address from the DHCP service on VMnet 1. In the DHCP Client tab, click the New button to create a new DHCP client. In the Interface field, select Ethernet 2, which is the interface we are using for the WAN2 connection. If everything is configured correctly, you will see the WAN2 interface receive an IP address from the same subnet as your physical LAN network. Next, we will configure a static IP address for the LN11 network. In the Address field, enter the IP address that you want to assign to this interface, along with the subnet mask in CIDR format. And don't forget to select Ether3 as the interface. This is the interface we are using for the LA11 network. Okay, in the same way, we will now configure a static IP address for the Ether4 interface, which will be used for the LAN 12 network in this lab setup. Okay, so we have now completed the IP address configuration for all interfaces on MikroTik RouterOS. Now, open a Windows virtual machine so we can verify the network connection through the MikroTik RouterOS that we just configured. For this test PC, configure its network adapter to use VMnet 11 or VMnet 12, depending on which LAN network you want to test. Since we have not configured a DHCP server on MikroTik yet, we will manually assign a static IP address to this Windows test machine. Make sure the IP address is in the same subnet as the LAN you are connected to, and set the default gateway to the IP address of the LAN interface on the MikroTik RouterOS. Next, open the command prompt window. After that, try pinging the MikroTik RouterOS gateway address. If you receive replies, it means the Windows machine has successfully communicated with the LAN interface on MikroTik. Next, try pinging Google to verify internet connectivity through MikroTik RouterOS. At this point, you will not be able to access the internet yet. This is because NAT has not been configured on MikroTik RouterOS. Now, from the left side menu, select IP, then choose Firewall. Switch to the NAT tab. Then click New to create a new NAT rule. In the NAT rule window, select SRC NAT in the chain field. In the Out interface field, select Ether 1 or Ether 2, depending on which WAN interface you want to use for internet access. Next, switch to the Action tab to configure the action for this NAT rule. In the Action field, select Masquerade. After that, click Apply and OK to save the NAT rule that we just configured. Immediately after that, you will see that PCs in the LAN network can now access the internet through MikroTik RouterOS. And that's it. We have successfully completed the basic MikroTik RouterOS configuration on VMware. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe to support the channel. Thank you for watching, and see you again in the next videos.